Good morning, everyone. Would you please join in our opening hymn here, our gathering hymn, Wo Ya Ya.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Portland, Oregon. It's so great to see all of you here today, and so wonderful to have so many joining us online today. First Unitarian is a multi-generational community where each individual can learn and grow spiritually, and then together we work to build a beloved community. After the service, everyone is invited to gather for our social hour. And just a brief note that our virtual social hour is on a brief break, so please watch our e-news for when that will resume again. Our in-person social hour today is down in Fuller Hall, just right below this sanctuary. So come on down to see our new April art wall display. You can browse our bookstore. If you're new here, we have a bookstore, and visit our various information tables. We have a couple of announcements this morning. If you've been thinking about becoming a member here at First Unitarian, today is your opportunity to take that step. You can join Reverend Tom over in the Channing Room, which is in the building right next door, to turn in your new member materials and to sign the official membership book. So if today is the day for you, we welcome you. We're glad that you're joining us on this journey of deepening connections and working for a more just and compassionate world. Tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. on Zoom is our final Matins, Lenten Matins service. This is kind of a Unitarian Universalist take on a Christian tradition, and we invite you to join by either looking on the church website for registration details or on this week's e-news. This Friday, April 7th, we're offering a Good Friday service at 7 p.m. in our Elliott Chapel, which will also be live streamed. So we hope many of you can make that. And next Sunday is Easter. So join us for a multi-generational, all-ages service filled with beautiful music, as always, and Reverend Allison's message, Astonished, which will be followed by an Easter egg hunt. Yes, we're back to that. And lastly, a reminder that Reverend Allison's installation service and reception is just 2 weeks away from today, so that's on April 16th, starting at 4 p.m. The Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt, who is president of Star King School for the Ministry, will be the preacher at that service. And if you need childcare to attend, please do get in touch with Cassandra by this Saturday, which is April 8th, to make your reservation. So whether you join in person or online for this deeply meaningful event in the church's life, we hope you will come. And now let's take a moment to greet one another this morning. You can use the chat option if you're online, and now just say hello to each other. Reverend Tom will light our chalice this morning. If you're joining us from home, please light a candle or chalice if you have one available. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
The words for our call to worship on this day come from poet David White. Above the mountains, the geese turn into the light again, painting their black silhouettes on an open sky. Sometimes everything has to be inscribed across the heavens so you can find the one line already written inside you. Sometimes it takes a great sky to find that small, bright, and indescribable wedge of freedom in your own heart. Sometimes, with the bones of the black sticks left when the fire has gone out, someone has written something new in the ashes of your life. You are not leaving, you are arriving. As we arrive together here on this Sabbath morning, may we live into our callings, each of us and all of us. Come now, let us gather here for worship. And let's join in singing Morning Has Broken. Standing for our responsive reading by Rumi. This singing art is sea foam. The graceful movements come from a pearl somewhere on the ocean floor. Poems reach up like spindrift and the edge of driftwood along the beach, wanting to derive from the slow and powerful root that we cannot see. Stop the words now. Open the window in the center of your chest and let the spirits fly in and out. Let's join now in our doxology, Spirit of Life.
For the month of April, we're sharing our offering with the Youth Environmental Justice Alliance, which is a project of Opal. This Youth Alliance is an after-school leadership development and political analysis program for low-income youth and youth of color in the Portland TriMet area. They center youth voices within such bodies as TriMet, City of Portland, the Bureau of Transportation, through meetings with their leadership and direct action. You'll find more information about them in this week's Front Steps e-News. If you'd like to give to our offering electronically, whether you're here in person or online, the next slide will show you how to do that, including a web link to the church's PayPal account. And if you're here in person and would like to donate by check or cash, our ushers will be coming by with baskets. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you. Lovely. Each week we make space in our service to name the concerns of our community life. We're a caring community, and pastoral support happens through our ministers and our lay ministers who hold the prayers of the congregation throughout the week. If you're here in person, you can always light a candle of intention in either one of our side galleries and leave a prayer request. And if you're online, you can email an intention to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. And if you have a concern that you would actually like shared in the Sunday service and also in our e-news, you can email that to parishconcerns@firstunitarianportland. This morning, we're holding Andy Wilson, our church treasurer, and his wife, Ronnie Emden. This past Tuesday, Andy's uncle, Tom Vinson, died peacefully at age 96. Andy says Tom was a leading citizen of Western Kentucky, a man of many accomplishments, but the one he was most proud of was serving as a superintendent of schools in Trigg County in the 1970s and leading the process of desegregation, improving the quality of education for all kids. Then on Wednesday night, as many of you know, 2 Army helicopters collided, killing all 9 on board. The helicopters fell on Vinson Farms, which has been in Andy's family since the 1830s. The current owners, Andy's cousins, are deeply upset, mostly from the death of so many brave soldiers, and also from the expectation of an extended process of hazmat removal from their farmland. And then yesterday, Andy received word that his last surviving uncle, Roger Vinson, had died at age 83 of advanced prostate cancer. Like his brother Tom, Roger was a man of many facets, says Andy. He was a highly respected senior federal judge, flew jets for the Navy, was a past president of the American Camellia Society, and a deacon of his church, and the list goes on. Andy and Ronnie were lucky to visit Roger on a recent trip and were able to say goodbye. We hold them both this morning. We're also very aware of the state of our world, the violence, devastating storms, political strife, and the state of our own yearning hearts. So as we breathe in the pain of the world and breathe out peace and love, please join me in prayer. Spirit within and without, very essence of our hearts, we're sending out prayers to the heavens like radio waves beamed into deep space with no real expectations attached, only hopes. Hope that Andy and Ronnie and all those who are living with grief find comfort during their time of loss. Hope that the world really can become a more welcoming, kinder place. Hope that conflict, both far and very near, can gently bring new understanding and compassion. But as we're radiating out our hopes, let's remind ourselves that without action, our action, hope doesn't count for much. Let's actually reach out to those with aching hearts. Let's ditch our own acts of selfishness and actively cultivate goodwill. Let's be open to understanding opposite points of view, regardless of how tempted we are to plug our ears and go, no, 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 because this life is a mixed bag of ups and downs and sideways, not just straight aheads. So may this be a prayer for each one of us, every one of us, to continue hoping, yes, and to not stop there. We have work to do. Amen. Let's share a few moments of silent reflection together. Please remain seated as we sing together, Return Again. Our reading this morning is by Nancy Schaefer, entitled Calling. When you heard that voice and knew finally it called for you and what it was saying, where were you? Were you in the shower, wet and soapy, or chopping cabbage late for dinner? Were you planting radish seeds or seeking that one lost sock? Maybe wiping handprints off a window or coaxing words into a sentence, or coming upon a hyacinth, or one last no. Where were you when you heard that ancient voice and did yes get born right then, and did you weep? Had it called you since before you even were? And when you knew that, did your joy escape all holding? Where were you when you heard that calling voice, and how in that moment did you mark it? How ever after are you changed? Tell us, please, all you can about that voice. Teach us how to listen, how to hear. Teach us all you can of saying yes.
Thank you, choir. This coming Wednesday will be the beginning of Passover, when Jews around the world come together for the Seder meal to remember and to reflect on the story of the liberation of the Jewish people from slavery in Egypt. And at that Seder table, one of the first people to be remembered will be Moses, who was at best a reluctant prophet. No, it wasn't Moses' decision to lead his people out of slavery, but he really couldn't ignore that burning bush that God sent his way. And we learn freedom was no easy task. He tries to convince Pharaoh to let his people go, but Pharaoh is not going to pay attention. It would take a whole series of plagues to make it so. The Nile turning to blood, the frogs, the vermin, the wild beasts, hail, locusts, total darkness, and still no freedom. Finally, during the 10th and final plague, when God passes over the homes of the Hebrews and spares their son, finally Pharaoh sets them free. And this is Holy Week in the Christian tradition, beginning with today, Palm Sunday, when Jesus enters Jerusalem, and commencing through the week with Jesus' death on the cross on Good Friday. Jesus, too, followed the call, but however, reluctantly. But in the Christian story, that following, that call would eventually lead to resurrection and to new life. Our spiritual theme this month of April is calling. Calling. And I expect for some of us, when we hear that word, we may think of examples like Moses or Jesus, where the call comes in some very dramatic fashion and from somewhere seemingly outside of them. Prophets often show up in a dramatic fashion, and where the call leads you is anything but easy. Maybe it even leads to your death. So that theme of call, what does the word calling conjure up for you? In our reading today, the poet Nancy Schaefer asks, when you heard that voice and knew finally it called for you and what it was saying, where were you? Did those questions prompt a response from you, a memory perhaps, or maybe a question along the lines of, what in the world is he talking about? When it comes to the question of call, what is it that comes to mind for you? For some here, I expect an answer may come quickly, but for others, what may come are simply more questions, perhaps including, isn't it mostly minister types who experience a call? Well, yes, oftentimes ministers do like to talk about our call, and they can take many forms. My experience of a call to ministry happened one day, many, many years ago, as I walked along East Superior Street in Duluth, Minnesota one day. I don't remember much of what had happened the day before, just how in a moment on that walk, it was clear to me that I was supposed to become a minister. I was a little startled by this at first. I was pretty settled in my editing job at a daily newspaper there in Duluth. I had not too long before found Unitarian Universalism as a church home, but the idea of ministry had felt like it came out of the blue. I didn't know what quite to do with that sense of call. I thought about it for several days. I figured it would go away, but then it kept coming back day after day and even for some weeks. It still didn't go away. I got up the courage finally to make an appointment to talk with my minister. I didn't know what she would say, but I feared it might be, "What? Are you kidding?" But she listened to my story, and her first response was to say, "Well, I wondered how long it would be before you figured it out." I had a sense that you were heading in that direction. She then advised me that if I was indeed discerning a call to ministry, I should start learning as much as I could about life in the church. And, well, why didn't I begin by leading the annual fund drive that would be starting just a few months from now? No time to waste. Long story short, you never know exactly where the call is going to take you. Now, at first, it did feel as if that sense of call came from someplace very much outside of me, and I was a little startled. But I look back on it these many years later, and I realized that, in fact, it was something that had been percolating on some level for a long time. In fact, as I've reflected more about it through the years, it may be even something that may have come as an expectation from my family about what I would do with my life. I think my father had a call to ministry that didn't get fulfilled, and maybe that somehow got passed on to me. These are strange things. With time, I've come to see that that call has been there for some time. It just took a while for it to come to the surface. Words again from the poet. Were you in the shower wet and soapy, or chopping cabbage late for dinner? Were you planting radish seeds or seeking one lost sock? Maybe wiping handprints off a window or coaxing words into a sentence? Or coming upon a hyacinth on one last no? Where were you when you heard that ancient voice? And did yes get born right then? And did you weep? Had it called you since before you even were? And when you knew that, did your joy escape all holding? Where were you when you heard that calling voice? And how, in that moment, did you mark it? How ever after are you changed? Some of us, I expect, have had moments of clarity when it comes to a call, or perhaps the word we would use would be vocation. What is it that we're supposed to be doing with our lives? But I don't think mostly they come in the form of grand awakenings, but in more subtle ways, in those moments when we have that sense of, yes, that is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is the direction I'm heading in. And mostly they are not some one-time events, but something that happens day by day, maybe over some much longer time. Calling, I've come to see, is more often than not something that is ongoing, a kind of check-in about where we are and where it is we're going. But it's also important to make space to discern which messages are important and which ones are not. There are all kinds of messages we get about what we should be or who we should be, but those more often than not may actually lead us off course. But the thing about callings is, as I've come to understand them, is that they don't leave, but they just seem to keep showing up in one way or another. A story. Rachel Naomi Remen writes about an odd dream she had many years earlier. It was a single image, but she woke and she was deeply disturbed. She had no idea what this dream meant, but felt like it was some sort of message because it aroused such strong feelings of sadness and a sense of being trapped for her. The image was very vivid. It was a daffodil bulb planted in the earth, and lying on top of it was a large and very heavy rock. Because of this rock, the daffodil was unable to bloom. For several weeks, she could not get the dream out of her mind, and eventually she described it to a friend. The friend said, well, perhaps there's a conversation going on between the rock and that daffodil. Why not listen in? And Remen said that with surprise, she realized that she knew what this conversation was. The rock was saying, "It's a dangerous world. Don't bloom. I will keep you safe." Remen began to laugh and said, "That rock sounds just like my father." Her friend asked if she could hear the other side of the conversation. What was the bulb saying to the rock? "I need to bloom," Remen told her. "Blooming is my whole purpose for being alive." The friends sat together thinking about this for a while. Then the friend frowned and said, "It should feel good to have that heavy rock between you and danger, shouldn't it?" Suddenly, Remen's eyes filled with tears, but she says she had no idea why. She let the matter drop there. But from time to time, she would think about that strange dream, and once she even dreamt it again, and the dream was just as disturbing. Years go by, and Remen is agonizing over a major career change. The stress of this decision became very intense, and one morning she wakes up with a severe pain in her back, just to the right of her spine. Annoyed, she thought she had just slept wrong, and she took a couple aspirin, but the pain did not go away. After the third and fourth day, she went to see her doctor, who told her that the pain did not correspond to anything they could find anatomical that he knew about, and therefore must be connected somehow to stress. He said he had nothing to offer her. The pain went on for weeks. Finally, someone suggested that she consult an acupuncturist to see if she might find some relief there. That was not the usual thing to do at this time many years ago, but she had become desperate. So she goes to see the acupuncturist named Dr. Rossman. He takes her pulse for a long time and examines her carefully. He runs his finger lightly down her back, and when he touches the place that was hurting, the pain was so intense that she cried out, "Ah!" He said, "This is an acupuncture point. The life energy, the chi, is stuck here." With her permission, he could try to release the block by putting an acupuncture needle there. Remen had never had acupuncture treatment before and was a little skeptical, but the pain had gone on for so many weeks that she felt she had no choice but to try. So she lays down on her stomach on his examining table and closes her eyes. Her words now, "As soon as I felt the needle, the old, half-forgotten image of the daffodil bulb and the rock appeared to me with extraordinary clarity. Suddenly I understood how the rock felt. The rock was afraid to let the bulb bloom. It knew the daffodil's value and was determined that it must not come to harm. If it bloomed and became visible, it could be hurt. I also understood for the first time that if it did not bloom, the daffodil might die." She talks about in her family, survival was something that was learned. Her father grew up in the Depression and the war. He had become an expert at surviving. It was a question of tenacity, of putting safety above all other considerations. Living, on the other hand, was a matter of passion and of risk, of finding something important and serving it, of doing whatever was needed in order to survive out loud. She says that as a child of her family, she said she had not understood the difference in this way before. Perhaps survival was not the goal of life after all. As she anxiously began to wonder if it was possible to protect something without stopping the life in it, she says that in her mind's eye, that rock spontaneously begins to change its shape. She writes again, "As I watched in surprise, slowly it became taller and thinner and more transparent until I realized it was becoming a greenhouse. Inside it, the daffodil bulb put out a spike and bloomed. The yellow of the flower was extraordinary, as if it were made not of petals, but of light. Lying there on that acupuncture table, she begins to weep. In the blink of an eye, things had turned inside out. The reason the rock had given the bulb for not blooming was the very reason why it was important to bloom. It was a dangerous world, a world of suffering, a world of loneliness, of loss. And in that world, daffodils were something that was needed. Remen writes that after that first treatment, the pain never returned to her back. When she visited the doctor and told him the story, he said that very acupuncture point has a name, and that it's the one that was blocked for her was called the heart protector. Shortly after, she left her faculty position at a university and found a new way to practice medicine, which was the path she was supposed to be on. I am here to live out loud, the writer Émile Zola said. I am here to live out loud. Life, I think, is about finding our voices. Sometimes it's about learning which voices are truly our own and which ones are not. And sometimes it can take a while to figure it all out. Sometimes it takes finding the right protection. It takes our willingness to pay attention to the signs that come our way. And sometimes those signs may not make much sense, at least not at first. It takes time to know how our stories are different from or how they grow out of the stories of others, including our own families. It may take time to get enough distance from all the messages we receive about who we should be or how it is we should be in the world. In his poem, Ask Me, William Stafford says, "Ask me whether what I have done is my life. Ask me whether what I have done is my life." Words of scholar Parker Palmer reflecting on that line. Before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you have decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truths you embody, what values you represent. Life, I think, is about making space to hear what that call might be for each of us. And it doesn't usually come in the form of a burning bush, but who knows, it might. Maybe sometimes that's the only way that the universe can get our attention. But more often, I think it's something much more subtle. And our first job may be to get out of the way and to listen and to pay attention. Each of us is precious and whole, just as we are. Each of us has the capacity to do our part to make the world more whole, a little more loving, more compassionate. That doesn't mean the need to be at the top of our profession or the best at any given thing. It means we just have to be first, be first who we are, and to listen to what it is the world might be asking of us, to pay attention to our own particular calling or callings that might be. The theologian Martin Buber tells the story of the great Hasidic Rabbi Zuzah. On his deathbed, he began to cry uncontrollably, and his students and disciples tried so very hard to comfort him. They asked him, "Rabbi, why do you weep? You are almost as wise as Moses. You are almost as hospitable as Abraham, and surely heaven will judge you favorably." Zuzah answered them, "It is true. When I get to heaven, I won't worry so much if God asks me, 'Zuzah, why were you not more like Abraham?' or 'Zuzah, why were you not more like Moses?' I know I would be able to answer these questions. After all, I was not given the righteousness of Abraham or the faith of Moses, but I tried to be both hospitable and thoughtful. But what will I say when God asks me, Zuza, why were you not more like Zuza? Words again of Nancy Schaefer. Tell us, please, all you can about that voice. Teach us how to listen, how to hear. Teach us all you can of saying yes. May each of us find our callings, whatever it is they may be. May each of us find our own liberation, and with that, may we join in the liberation of all creatures on earth. In all our days, good people, may we find our way to yes. So be it. Will you pray with me now? Spirit of life and of love, we give thanks for this day and for our lives. Call us over and over again, Spirit, to the work of love. Remind us that the universe, just like our lives, continues to unfold every day, in every moment, and that we are part of that unfolding, that continuous evolution. As we grow and change, so does the universe, in ways we can only attempt to understand, asking us to bring what we have to the table and to be of use over and over again. Grant us wisdom and courage for the journey that we, in all of our days, might live out loud. Blessed be, and amen. Let's sing together now. There's a river flowing in my soul. Take courage, friends. The road is often long. May we answer the call and all that it asks of us. May our answers and our lives make love real all around us. This is the day we've been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Amen.